Welcome to Diligent Canine, and in this Q&A video I'm going to talk about a problem that confuses even me sometimes, and that is my dog won't take a treat. When I say this question confuses me, there's a tongue-in-cheek answer and there's a serious answer. So the tongue-in-cheek answer is, what do you mean the dog won't take a treat? It doesn't eat? And the science behind that being pretty much all biological living things need to consume energy to survive. So your dog's not eating, there's a real serious problem there. The serious answer is that I'm not sure of your understanding of your dog's behavior. In other words, if you're telling me that your dog is not taking a treat, I'm starting to question how much detective work or research or observation you've even done to try to understand why it is your dog is not taking the food reward that you're offering. There are some legitimate reasons why a dog might refuse a food reward, but I want to save those for the end of the video so that they don't become excuses or inhibit one's observational skills and their ability to sort of look at the situation closer and examine the other factors that might be involved in the dog's behavior. The first thing I want to consider is how much you're feeding your dog. In the video I posted about what to feed your dog, I also talked a little bit about how much to feed your dog. So most Americans are grossly overweight, and that is not a secret. And it's not a secret either that many, maybe even, probably even, most dogs are overweight as well. Maybe not grossly overweight, but definitely not in a healthy weight range. So what I mean here is if a dog is eating whatever it wants throughout the day, you're just sort of giving it all its meals, its regular food, and you're overfeeding it so it has plenty to eat, there's no motivation for that dog to behave differently. It has no drive or desire to work for food when it can eat whatever it wants anyway. This is one of the many reasons that I advocate against using free feeders and just letting a dog self-reward and self-satisfy and eat whenever it wants throughout the day. That's not a good idea, and this is one of those reasons why. Going right along with how much you're feeding your dog overall throughout the day is when you are feeding your dog, and specifically when you are trying to train your dog in relation to when you're feeding your dog. So even if you're feeding your dog an appropriate amount of food, they're at a healthy weight, if you're trying to train them with food right after they just ate, say, their breakfast, your timing is backwards. So if the dog just ate half of its daily food, so you feed it twice a day, 2 cups in the morning, 2 cups in the evening, and you feed it 1 cup for its breakfast, and then you got 1 cup for it to train with, well, the dog just ate for free. And similar to the situation we just talked about, it's going to be hard for the dog to try to justify or have the motivation to work for that food if it just ate a healthy amount. So you might have a little better luck with this in the morning. It might not be the case, but there's a real simple solution. Feed your dogs the healthy amount of food. You don't have to starve them, but make sure they're hungry when you train. You just have to change the order around. You need to do your training so you use up your training food, whether that is half a cup or 1 cup or half the dog's food for the day or all their food for the day. They need to work through their training food before they get their regular meals. Another thing to consider is the quality of the food and the food reward, that is. So what I mean here is if you are trying to reward the dog with a low quality, dry kibble that is mostly just ground up cornmeal, that's not very appetizing, especially if that's the same food that it eats throughout the day, every single day of its life. And you can see how these problems start to compound on top of each other and how closely they are intertwined with each other. So you need a higher quality food reward, especially if you are messing up or maybe not sure about some of the other categories. So if you are going to use a dog's daily kibble, which is something I do. Occasionally I'll get a high value, cut up some hot dogs or Slim Jims, cheese sticks, or do something like that, something special for my dog. But usually the food that I train him with is the same kibble that he eats throughout the day. The difference is I make sure that he is hungry when he eats. Again, I'm not saying starve your dog. I'm saying withhold their food. They still get enough food to survive, a healthy amount of food. You just save it until it's time to train. And you don't get your meal until we train, or maybe even better, everything that you eat throughout the day comes from my hand. So you don't get a single crumb of food unless you work for it. So that can offset the quality of food rewards, but if your dog just isn't that driven for food, using those higher value food rewards, some kind of like, think meaty and cheesy generally. So salami, you could even grill a chicken breast when you cook for yourself, cook half of what you cook for yourself for your dog and cut it up, and just like you would meal prep for yourself, you can meal prep for the dog. That way you have some high quality treats that are ready to go for the dog. After you've made sure that you're using high quality treats, that your timing is correct, so your treats and your training are coming before your meal times, or the dog is working for all of their meals, and that your dog is eating a healthy amount throughout the day, then we can look at some of the serious issues that may explain why your dog is still not taking a food reward. So obviously there could be something medical going on. Your dog could be sick. When people get the flu, your appetite changes, it gets messed up. So if there is a prolonged issue and you notice other changes in the dog's behavior, like of course vomiting, or their stool, if their pooper is super runny or super dry, you might want to just stop by the vet and make sure to rule out any kind of medical thing. As far as other training or behavioral things can go, it could be possible that your dog is not motivated by food. This does happen sometimes. All dogs have to eat, so it's not a case that some dogs are motivated by food and some dogs are not motivated by food. They all are motivated by food because they have to eat to live. But there may be other more dominant or stronger drives in the dog. So because you're not neglecting and starving your dog, that food drive is mostly satisfied by the food that you provide for the dog, and it's not as strong or as present as maybe their drive for a tug or a ball. So I can tell you that my dog Dean, if you held out some food in front of him, even if he hasn't eaten all day and it's coming close to like 24 hours since he's eating, you hold out a handful of food in one hand and then start whipping a tug around in the other hand, that food might as well be in the trash can somewhere. There's just no questions asked. That tug means everything. He would probably even go for a tennis ball over food. Might depend on the day for that, but definitely for the tug. So that kind of illustrates the drive issue. While we're talking about drives, it's important to remember throughout all your training that a dog can get too high in drive. So normally drive keeps them motivated and enthusiastic about the work and the tasks that they're doing. But just like for humans, they can get too excited and become distracted. So this is the sort of reptile brain, fight or flight reflex. Even though there are more primal responses than just those two, what's happening here is the sympathetic nervous system is kicking into overtime. So the dog becomes so fixated on the thing that's going to have to fight or run from that the dry kibble in your hand doesn't even hold a candle. So the key to managing that is to gradually work up to that stimulation and really do your legwork and progressively training the dog to focus on you and stay focused on you through progressive levels of stimulation and distraction so that it can manage those higher states of drive. So I hope that helps clarify some confusion or some common issues around dogs taking or not taking food rewards. Stay tuned for the next episode of Diligent Canine. Remember to subscribe on patreon.com/diligentcanine to support military and working dogs.